Hi, hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering a spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHP plus 3. Those plus 3 spells are homebrew spells. We're at plus 2 at the moment. You can head back in the playlist to find them. And today's spell is Sending.
I'm going to try one more time.
Oh gosh. Okay.
What do I have? Is it nighttime already?
It's getting late.
I mean, it's late evening. It's probably close to midnight by now.
Okay, this is. I'm going to think about what I'm going to say on this one.
No chance.
I'm using my Pearl of Power. It's my last 3rd level spell. Okay. Hello, gentlemen. This is Jester. Please respond. Just yes, if you've seen the ruby. Please. Was that 20?
Oh.
Oh shit!
Third level evocation, casting time of 1 action, range of unlimited. Holy shit. I knew it was large, but what? Have we had an unlimited range? That is so ridiculous. What? Opponent's verbal somatic material, a short piece of fine copper wire, duration 1 round. You send a short message of 25 words or less to a creature with... Oh God, I can't... Okay, no. Today, this is sending. This is the sending episode. This is... Rules are out the window when it comes to sending. Okay. Apologies for the outburst, but this is definitely going to be a different episode. You send a short message of 25 words or less to a creature with which you are familiar. The creature hears the message in its mind, recognizes you as the sender if it knows you, and can answer in a like manner immediately. The spell enables creatures with intelligence scores of at least 1 to understand the meaning of your message. Not even touching the second part yet. Well, not even just the last part there, but the... 25 words is a nice limit I'll have to add. 25 words can also be actually quite a lot. It depends how you use it. If you do run-on sentences and lots of ums and hms and expletives and don't use conjunctions, it's going to be eaten up real fast. But if you use efficient sentences or shorthand, or if you're world building, or if you just look at regular history with radio transmissions, or messages, any kind of code, or actual shorthand, like judicial shorthand, in a world where sending exists, that would be developed. That's such a... Okay, there are spells that get reactions out of me. We have Mordenkainen's Sword for just how god-awful that was. We have Fly for how I don't think it should be at the level it's at. And now we have Sending. Okay. You can send the message across any distance and even to other planes of existence. But if the target is on a different plane than you, there's a 5% chance that the message doesn't arrive. Okay, now we're getting to the other part. Unlimited! Which means this can go to the outer planes, which means technically, if you are running with Blue Veil, this can go to other universes. It's an unlimited range! What's the tax for doing something so grand, such a ridiculous arcane feat of communication? 5% chance of failure. 5%. No, anything bad happened? Do you get exhausted if that happened? Does your mind recoil through madness because you tried to contact something like with contact other plane? No. It just doesn't get sent. Okay, back to the shorthand thing. Sending exists. It's a 3rd level spell, thankfully. It's still low enough to be accessed by court mages and generally lower magic fantasy settings, where we still have casters around, which still throws a wrench in things. Because, okay, if everything I brought up in message, everything I brought up in the message video, how many things have I referenced already? That got around the fact it could be a short phrase. It didn't have a strict word count. This does have a strict word count, but we just mentioned that can be entirely overcome by efficient use of it, the fact it's relatively cheap compared to some spellcasters, and take a breath. Shorthand can make efficient coded work of it in a setting where that exists and is relatively available. That would have been made. Even when it's rarer, that would have been made just to make better use of the spell, if it was a higher level, but it's not. It's kind of that situation where, okay, it's filling a niche. When it comes to damage spells, I mean, that doesn't even work. Because, okay. When it comes to spell levels, there's generally a vibe. There's a vibe that kind of runs through the majority of them. There are outliers, but you can kind of get, okay, this feels like a blank level spell, or this feels like this should be a higher level spell. It's like the comments that reverse gravity feels like a 9th level spell, but it's a 7th, or why I think fly should be higher. Sending. Okay, right. See invisibility. We just covered that a few, 2 episodes ago. Not that grand of a thing, supposedly. On paper, on base paper, it doesn't sound that bad. And with apparently the Jeremy Crawford ruling that they still have disadvantage to hit, I don't get that, nor do I rule it. It's the idea that a 2nd level spell, no material cost, well, there is a material component, but it's not cost anything, it's not consumed. It's 2nd level. It's see invisibility and into the ethereal plane. It's not detect magic that has a limit of a 30-foot range, or identify where you have to touch something or it has to be within 10 feet. That's just your vision. You can see invisible things in the ethereal plane now. Depending on that might not come up that much, which is why it's gone to the wayside and hasn't been seen for that ridiculous thing it can do. Because again, if people have readily access to this, people will see into the ethereal. Even if it's not regularly exploited in the campaign already, if you're retroactively going back to it of oh, the ethereal plane's still some usually the ethereal plane, specifically itself, or other planes as well, aren't really explored on the material realm. There's a 2nd level spell that allows you to explore the material realm layering of the ethereal plane. You can look into a plane as a 2nd level spell. The amount of societies, cultures, religions, different theories of magic and arcanum, history, the way that would be used, the things you would see there. Okay, the ethereal plane is usually this vague and distant thing that some other higher level spells you briefly dip into and then step out of, and later level you can stay there for a longer duration. Or you send things there. You don't interact with it that often. Was the assumption in most settings. See invisibility blows that out of the water. Now, as a player, who would cast that? I don't know, not that often. See invisibility is probably the best part of it, and depending on the campaign, maybe a lot, maybe not at all. But when it comes to the fact that it's a spell that exists of a lower level with a reusable component that does not cost any gold cost, and is relatively in a few classes, that's gonna be used. That's gonna be explored. And that 2nd level example is what I bring up with 3rd. So when it comes to damage spells, we think Fireball, Lightning Bolt. These are the 2 right here, right now. Fireball is relatively powerful, right? It's relatively powerful. It's a go-to damage spell because it's just ridiculously good for the range and area and damage type. But something that will have a much longer, grand, defying impact on a fantasy setting, not a fantasy setting, on a world, is communication. Congrats, you have explosives. Humanity's had explosives for quite a while, maybe of different yields, but communication over grand distances was what changed the game. Even if it's not anything efficient, Morse code was a thing. Humans made it efficient when it can only be dots and dashes. Now think of fantasy races or elves who live for hundreds of years and have been around for thousands. Think of what they would come up with. Think of the changes to language or its own independent language to transfer as much information as possible in as few words as possible. Or how bloated a language would become. Maybe it's not an efficient coded thing or contextual. That's the other thing. It's not delivered in a flat tone. Or at least that's how most of the time it's ruled, is that it's you saying these 25 words. If you can say these 25 words and your tone is given through it, then yes, you can have languages that tone and context can drive a lot of meaning from very few words. If it is a flat tone, or if the race just hasn't gone up to that, or just didn't come up with or if the language is not through context and verbal connotation, and it's just going the brute force route of a word for everything. What's that dictionary for obscure sorrows? Stuff like that. Of a single word that means something so specific. It's gotten to the point that I've had players look up synonyms, conjunctions, and open a thesaurus briefly in between sessions. When it comes to a very important sending, they have to send at the start of next session, just so they can get as much meaning out of those 25 words as possible. Now imagine this isn't a bunch of players around a room and we're all speaking the same language or English at this example, but it's in the world of that 25 word limit. There would be languages built around it, because communication, instant communication, we're not even touching the playing part yet, across an entire world. Morse code was still limited by cable. This, you need one spellcaster as the sender. Anyone can be the receiver, even creatures with 1 intelligence. And the big thing is, they still get the meaning of your message. Not the vague idea, not the vague direction, they get the meaning. They understand it. Like screw the whole message in a city situation of like the various telephone poles. I mean, you could still do that, especially since feet accessible and a cantrip's not that hard to get relatively system-wise. And if that reflects in the setting. But when it comes to sending, there'd be entire wizard schools training just to get spellcasters to the point of being able to cast sending, because that is such a utility and that is such a need, and that is also a reason a setting would put materials into spellcasters. Yes, you can make various abstractions, fabricate as well, grand effects, and even more depending on how you run it or you interpret it. A kingdom, a council of wizards or a courtmate, why just have one? Yes, one would be amazing. Having a duke being able, or a lord or king or whatever the title is, being able to instantly send a message to someone on the other end of their kingdom, on the other end of a border. Oh, no need to wait for a pigeon. No need. This goes instantly. And you instantly, that's the other part, I haven't even touched on this yet, you instantly get another 25 words back. For free from the other user as a part of the spell. The one restriction, and especially with taking up scrying, and if we're countering the scrying version of familiar, is that it needs to be a familiar target. The way I run this in my setting is that in this one kingdom, they have this, again, similar thing. They train up these wizards up to this level because they want them for sending. They might specialize into other things on the side, but they're primarily for this. They're taken in armored carts and escorts to the nearest one in this relay, or to as many as possible if they can help it, but those are very vital targets. So they become familiar with each other within this network, and they can send messages to each other across the kingdom, or to certain high-ranking individuals. Now you're into the issue that if you have your entire intelligence system relying on it being transferred through another person, a third party, I mean, telephone operators were a thing. Just gotta get one operator you can trust. All right, back to the panic. 25 words back. 25 words instantly back. Really good. Shorthand language, we already covered the majority of that. That's fine. But the fact you can get it back right away as well. Yeah, you'd have to send another, it's only like 1, 2, and you might have to cast something else again. But comparing that to even like the grandest not needing someone on a horse to go and travel, having someone on a horse travel days, or maybe drop off with someone else at a stable on another horse, go off to another end of the kingdom, stop there, get a new message, hand it to another guy on a horse, who then heads back to that same stable, hands it to another guy on a horse, who finally gets it back to the original messenger. About a week at least has passed, and any of them could have been killed along the way. Any of them could have gone slowed down by something. Any of them could have gone missing. Any of them could have had the paper tampered with along the way. The Pony Express, which I just described, was also, again, a game changer in communication. And other forms of the Pony Express. There were other things like that existed, but it's the system of like multiple carriers of messages instead of just one. But anyway, outside of that, sending overcomes all of that. Or the pigeon example, which probably other people are bringing up now. I mean, you had to trust the messenger, or you had to trust that the pigeon would get there. Trusting someone to send something is not the worst. It's not that different. Okay, I think I've calmed down a little bit enough for the material world version of things here. Okay. 5%? 5%? You're sending a message. It's a 3rd level spell across planes. And that's only a 5% chance of failure? Yeah, sure, you don't have to have something bad happen back. I'd have 5% be something backlashes, like, uh-oh, you accidentally contacted some weird thing floating in the astral, and it sends this psychic burst back to you. So, I don't know, something like contact other plane going wrong? And still keep it at 5%, and I'd say that's fine. The fact that it's 5% and then nothing happens, it's a wasted spell slot. Oh no, 3rd level. That actually does hurt a little. But that's, I'm not saying, oh, it should be way higher. I'm saying that's really, really good. Like, that's a huge benefit for this spell. And the one thing that would restrict it from being something like contact other plane, you get to ask questions of something that you're kind of randomly just shooting out into whatever is out there to get an answer from. The whole sanity check thing is either what you contacted, didn't give the best information, in the sense that, oh no, you've talked to some demon, some random gith on a drug trip, some illithid elder brain, and things have gone bad. Something in the outer realms. Like, there are still longer forms of communication that we could get across, like project image. Because that one you can talk through, you can carry your senses looking back through it, and you can still have to trust a court mage with that. But project image has a limit of a 500-foot range, which is already super large, and I thought ridiculous. But then we got to unlimited. Not to mention project image, which, yes, takes care and does even more than what sending does within that 5-mile range on one plane. Still, the communication and the value of just directly talking to someone virtually from 500 miles away is relatively better, and you can still set up the chain communicators that way, with exception. That's a 7th level spell. Ease of access. Ease of access. This is you would have settings entirely funding or training people, or training nobility directly to be able to get the 3rd level spellcasting just for sending. This spell is that valuable. Maybe not in the hands of a bandit, though it is valuable in the hands of a bandit, one who knows how to use it correctly. But in the hands of even adventurer, okay, I haven't even touched adventurers using this yet. Okay, yeah, adventurers. Name a game that hasn't cast sending. Okay, actually don't. They're probably like all martial parties and stuff. Or, you know, certain classes don't get it, yada yada. Definitives are not always the best. But anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. There are so many times I've ran a D&D party that picks up sending. Because it's always great to have basically an ally a phone call away. Yes, it's only a few words. But like that situation I just brought up, I've had players go to specific dictionaries to get the most use out of those 25 words. Or just saving spell slots. Trying to make the most of it, even if they're not in a pinch, just to squeeze as much utility out of that one spell. Instantly get messages back. They can ask a question of someone. They can warn someone. They can get messages back as to the situation that's going on. Or just stay in contact. Like, if you have spell slots to burn at the end of the day, 3rd level ones or even higher, and just go like, yeah, I'm just gonna contact all these people. I've had parties do that. And I just assume it's something that also happens in some of your games. Like, okay, teleport and teleportation circle, which we haven't gotten to yet. Also, teleportation in general also has a grand impact on settings. I mean, every spell does. But those are at least restricted by material components or high-level spells. This is neither. 3rd level is decently getting high up, but it's not high. 5th level is still something that can be achievable by your average, like maybe 1 in a few thousand. 3rd level, there's descriptions in just the player, in the, I forget which monster book, but it's hobgoblins having evocation artillerists that have up to fireball. There are so many monsters or basic spellcasters in monster manuals, supplements, books, adventures, campaigns that are like, oh yeah, they just hover around 3rd level spells. Maybe a little up, maybe just down. Even the basic cultist Even the basic cultist stat block has a 2nd level spell. Come on. Unlimited. Range of unlimited. Yes, you have to have met the person first, but that makes things like an adventurer even more valuable. You might even have a noble specifically call out to travelers or specific merchants or people who have been to other kingdoms. A diplomat might not just be there for a one-time visit, but to purposely head back to then be able to have, if they know sending, to then be able to send sending between those two people, or act as the intermediary in between that. Then there's the other thing of, depending on the campaign, especially if it's like way higher magic, and you've like met other planar entities, and have talked to them, and have gotten familiar with them. How often do they crop up? Is it easy to just call on them whenever? And if any of those two things were a previous issue, sending. It's a familiar target. Man, it's almost like the second-hand, first-hand familiar should have been described elsewhere outside of one spell in S. Okay, I think I got a lot of that out of my system. 10 out of 10. Just straight up 10 out of 10. I'm not even debating bringing it down. 10 out of 10. This is... a spell that can do similar communication and finally outclass it. Project Image has a limited range, compared to Unlimited, I know. But then also has... 7th level, so it's just not going to have as much access to where it can be used reliably for communication on a regular basis, unless it's a really, really high magic setting. Where ease of access to magic is easy and training is easy. Even if training is difficult in a setting, if getting to the point of casting it is easy enough, 3rd level's all you need to go. 3rd level spells. Or at least all the, kingdom or institutions need to fund or support your teaching for. Communication. It's